On this Locked On Jayhawks, Kansas women's basketball back to the NCAA Women's Basketball Tournament for the second time in 3 years.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Derek Johnson. You can give me a follow at DJohnsonRadio on Twitter. Thanks for making Locked On Jayhawks your first listen every day. We are free and available anywhere you get your podcast. You can check out our show on KU men's basketball and their path being set. We released that as well. This is our episode talking about the women's team making it to the NCAA tournament as well. So we'll break that down, what it means, their first round matchup with Michigan and the region pod ahead, everything like that for KU. First, this episode of the show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. So the KU women's basketball team, men's team getting a 4 seed, women's team getting an 8 seed here. And they are going to be playing in Los Angeles because how they do it in the women's bracket is the basically top seeds, the higher seeds of each pod gets to host. So their 1 seed in their pod is the Trojans of USC, which means they're going out to LA for that. And this is their second appearance in 3 seasons after not having one under Brandon Schneider. So it's been a nice kind of development over the back end of his coaching stint here in Lawrence. Obviously, last year there was disappointment that they didn't make it. They ended up winning the NIT. There was, wanting to get back here. There was high expectations this year. There was the struggle of the early parts of the season where it looked like this wouldn't happen and there was going to be a disappointment. And then they overcame that. They got hot at the right time. And not only did they make it in, but they made it by a pretty clear margin where it doesn't even seem like they were really even on the bubble at this point, finishing in with an 8 seed. The 9 seed that got assigned to them is the Wolverines of Michigan, which means obviously they'll be playing Michigan in the first round. 2 years ago when they were in the NCAA tournament, they were in the 8-9 matchup as well, and they beat, I believe it was Georgia Tech. It was the largest NCAA tournament women's basketball win for KU in program history. And then they played a tight game with Stanford in the first half. Second half, Stanford pulled away and won a blowout. But now they get the opportunity, a couple years older for some of the players, to possibly get another crack if they can win this first game at another 1 seed. And in this case with USC, still a really good team. I don't know that they're as dominant as that Stanford team was 2 years ago. A bit of a younger USC team this year too than maybe that Stanford one was. And I think the big thing is if you would have said Kansas got an 8 seed, which obviously they did, you just didn't want to be in South Carolina. Like you didn't want South Carolina, who's undefeated, to be your 1 seed. And I guess from that standpoint, it's kind of a check here for Kansas. So those are kind of the things you need to know at most. Let's get in a little bit more on the Michigan matchup, specifically the rest of the region and maybe expectations for the KU women's basketball team on this bonus episode of Locked On Jayhawks. First, we're brought to you by Nissan. This week's March Madness bracket highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed further than the rest. Just like any of the new 2024 Nissan SUVs, these guys were able to take it to the next level. Tennessee Volunteers can only be described as a Pathfinder. They've been thrilling to watch and have really created a lane for themselves after claiming the top spot in the SEC. Player of the Year candidate Dalton Knecht has carried the Vols all season and made them a team to watch in March. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop at nissanusa.com. We're also brought to you by Amazon Fire TV, your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs as well as Fire TV Stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes as well as free live TV. With its opening weekend for basketball, college basketball tournaments, you're going to want to have Fire TV. They also recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free, including us with the Locked On Network and some of your favorite pro leagues and conferences. Fire TV channels lets you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more. Keep up to date with your favorite sport. And there's also entertainment, news, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. To learn more, just visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Kansas is going to be playing Michigan in the first round. More on the matchup. The Wolverines 20-13 on the year, 9-9 out of the Big Ten. Kansas, meanwhile, 19-12, 11-7 out of the Big 12. Kansas has been hot, though, coming through the back half of this season for the Jayhawks. So that's kind of been nice to see for them. When you look at Michigan specifically, obviously Kansas lost in the Big 12 tournament, but Michigan had won 3 straight regular season games going into the Big 10 tournament. There is a couple common opponents here. Kansas lost on the road to Penn State. Michigan also played Penn State, except Michigan was able to beat Penn State. They won 80-75, and that was also on the road. So that's not just a common opponent, but that's the common location and where you played them. Now, both teams also played Nebraska. From the Kansas point of view, the Nebraska win was one that was successful. That was back on December 20th when Kansas played Nebraska, and Michigan got to play Nebraska twice. Kansas beat them 69-52, so 17 points in the 2 games combined. For Michigan, they lost both games to Nebraska. They lost the first one in Lincoln by 19 points on January 17th, so that's not that far after when Kansas beat them by almost 20. And then they lost at home to Nebraska back at the beginning of February by 6. So you can take a couple things from those common opponents. Kansas on the year has been, when they've played right over this back half of the season, when they've got it going, they've been a good defensive team. They protect the rim, they protect the paint with Tiana Jackson. The defense has gotten going when they've kind of been at their best. They're not a very fast team. They don't score a lot in transition or fast break points. They don't get a ton of bench scoring. It's not a very deep team, but they pound the ball inside. They get buckets on the inside. They've got guards that can create driving lanes. And when they're right, the guards are creating shots, they're hitting shots, and they're playing good team defense all around. From the Michigan standpoint, also not a team who's going to, get out in fast break, and also not a team who's going to play at a very high tempo. So I think those things are probably good for Kansas, that you don't have to worry about a clash of style, but they're also a team that wants to, kind of pound it inside. They've been a good rebounding team so far this season, really on both ends of rebounding, with offensive rebounding and defensive rebounding. Not a team that's going to launch up like a ton of threes necessarily, though they have shot them extremely efficiently, even though it is on lower volume on the season. Defensively, though, this hasn't been a great Michigan team. And that's maybe an area where Kansas can take advantage in this game, especially with them being hot right now. I mean, obviously, they're the better seed here. So theoretically, that kind of makes you a favorite coming into this game. And then if you can get by Michigan, you're most likely looking to play in USC, assuming they can get by the 16 seed. USC 26-5 on the year, 13-5 in Pac-12 play. They are a team who wants to get maybe up and down a little bit more in terms of the fast break scoring. Middling tempo overall, but when they have the opportunity to score in fast break, they're basically doubling up Kansas in terms of their fast break points right now. Not a team who scores nearly as much in terms of their points in the paint. They take a lot of threes and they make them at a very high rate. And they've got one of the best, I guess you would say, young players in the country, in just a freshman in JuJu Watkins, who is putting up unbelievable numbers, 27 points per game. There's only 2 other players on the team who are averaging double figures. And there have been some games, though, with Watkins where she's gone like 10 of 30. So if you can have good team defense on her, maybe you're shooting yourself out of a game a little bit here. I'm not saying Kansas is going to win this game or move on, but I do think that it is something where you have an experienced Kansas team going up against a USC team where, JuJu Watkins, their best player, is a freshman, right? And they do have upperclassmen around her, like Mackenzie Forbes averaging 13.5. She's a senior. And Ryan Marshall's averaging over 10 points per game. She's a junior. But when your key player is a freshman and you have this veteran-laden team with Kansas players of 4- and 5-year players, and also it'll be a fun freshman matchup with SMya Nichols and JuJu as well when you look at that standpoint. But it's one where if Kansas plays their game and plays their style, right? We saw them beat Baylor earlier this year. We saw them compete with UConn and Virginia Tech and some of these good schools. There's no excuse why Kansas can't at least be competitive. So let's finish off. What should be the expectations here for KU and just kind of as a program moving forward? This episode of the show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for small businesses, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. They have a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire, gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That is linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. What is the realistic ceiling for this team? Well, I think when you look at having, we always talk about guard play wins in March, right? Well, you have veteran guard play. When you look at Holly Kerskeeter, she's been around the block a time or two, right? Zakiya Franklin, same thing. Yvette Mayberry, same thing. And SMya Nichols has been excellent. She's a young player, but that goes into the idea of having guard play. You've got your stud center who can help you out defensively. When you've been playing right, when you've been playing over this back half of the season, the defense has really picked up for Kansas and looked like a really good defense across the country. So, I mean, the realistic expectation, I think, becomes, can you win your first game and be competitive in the second game? But the ceiling is, why limit it there? You know, if you are a veteran team with good guard play that is kind of peaking at the right moment, even though you'd be an underdog if you're playing USC, you know, why limit yourself, right? So I do think there is an element for me that still would be a little bit, I don't know, if you look at it big picture, to say that in the Brandon Schneider era, only 2 NCAA tournament appearances through however many years and haven't made a second weekend yet. Like, I still feel like this program, there's no excuse why they can't be a consistent team that is consistently top 25. When you look at the facilities they get to use at Allen Fieldhouse, and, you know, you see like the WNIT final, you know, you have like 12,000 fans there. Like the support of the volleyball program, there is, if there is, you know, a good program, like people will come out and support it and everything. And so I do think the ceiling of the program is more than what we've seen over the past whatever decade, but I think you're more getting to it over the last couple of years. And I think this is another step in the right direction. The question becomes, you know, after this year, you're going to lose a lot of those veterans, a lot of those seniors. Are you going to take a step back next year, or like SMya Nichols is going to come back and be a superstar and you're going to build off of this? That becomes the real question. I think that's why this is important, because if this does end up being more of your ceiling type year as a program where you do have all these veterans and they came back for this year, then it is even more important to make that deep run this year to really show what the ceiling of the program can be, which basically what I'm saying is I think there's no excuse why it can't be one of the better programs in the country. All right, well, we'll see what they're going to do. We'll have a preview for you in that Michigan game more in depth coming up later in the week. We'll also get to picking the tournament bracket with some past history and parameters. We've got Nick Schwerdt scheduled to join us. We're going to have some KU preview for their game for the men's side when they're getting ready to take on Samford. So make sure you subscribe to the show anywhere you get your podcast. Thank you to the Everydayers out there. You can also find us on YouTube as well, and check out our men's episode talking about the Path Open for them and what they need to do and the tough matchups ahead for them, all right here with Locked On Jayhawks.